But one thing I realize is that, whenever we go through something, it's for a purpose. And anytime God allows trials in our lives, is for a specific reason. And it's to purge us. Sometimes it's to work on something that He's trying to get rid of within our lives so that we would look more like Him coming out of it. I just wanted to get on here to talk a little bit about my journey in pursuing God and His passion and what that's looked like for me. One of the things that really stood out that I feel like the Lord has placed on my heart to share is just about what my journey has looked like in different seasons. So when He began to call me, higher and just spending more time with Him in His presence and, just in devotion and all of that stuff, I actually entered into a period where I just felt like Him purging me, and so that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the purging, the fire of God, because I hear a lot of sermons, that are about, God is taking you out of this and He's going to bless you and your blessing is right around the corner. And, all of this stuff is, we're so focused on, I've been hurting, I've been, struggling, I've been going through the fire and things like that. But God is bringing me out. He's, it's coming, before you know it, and turn 3 times around and speak to your neighbor and, all of this stuff. But one thing I realize is that, whenever we go through something, it's for a purpose. And anytime God allows trials in our lives, is for a specific reason. And it's to purge us. Sometimes it's to work on something that He's trying to get rid of within our lives so that we would look more like Him coming out of it. So I know, we have this mindset of man, it's just the enemy is coming and he's attacking me. And, I'm going through all of this trauma right now, and it's just working on my trust and my faith in God, which is true, and we focus on that part, but I've found that in my journey with Him, that the reason why we're going through this is a lot of times overlooked. There is a purpose for fire, and we know that the Bible talks about that He's an all-consuming fire. And He is also love. So in His love, He doesn't allow us, like He says, come as you are, but He doesn't allow us to stay how we came, so He begins to, as I always love to say, He begins to peel the onion, and take off layers and take off who we think we are or how we see ourselves or how, we see God and Him, and He just begins to shower us with His love and show us just how much He loves us. And then He begins to work on, who we are, because if we don't understand who we are, then we begin to, we have those instant reactions, those instant, what do you call it? Default moves. So if a situation comes into our life, we have a default reaction to it, or we have a default way of, dealing with circumstances. And He really wants to begin to transform us by the renewing of our minds. Yes, but He's working on us to become more like Christ. So it's a process and it's a journey. And a lot of times these trials are used, these situations, this friction that He allows to come into our lives is so that it rubs off, that it comes off, that He can peel it off, that He can, remove those things from us so that every time we come out, we look more and more like Him. So it's a paradigm shift in regards. It's a thinking differently about all of this stuff. Nobody likes struggle. Nobody likes fire. Nobody likes, not being comfortable, not being at leisure, not being at peace, not being, feeling up all the time. But even in our struggles, I know Paul, he helps us to see that we can still have joy, we can have peace, we can have all of these things. So because he understands the purpose of suffering, and understands the purpose of going through the fire. And so if our God of love is an all-consuming fire, then the closer we draw to Him, the more we're gonna feel the heat. You know what I'm saying? Man, I just think right now when Moses was in in the desert and he saw the burning bush, and God said, Moses, take off your shoes because, you're standing on holy ground. It's like you don't realize it, but you're in my presence. And there are things that begin to get stripped away the closer we get to him. And so as I started on my journey and he began to call me higher, it's also a calling to be purged. It's also a calling to go through a process where he begins to purify your heart. But the good thing about it is that he gives us a desire for this. And it's so weird, because how do you have a desire to be purged? How do you have a desire to be burned in the fire? How do you have a desire to be stripped of things that you think is part of yourself, right? And so it's so weird, because he actually gives you a desire for that. And it's not something that you can conjure up yourself, he gives it to you. And it's so funny because at the time, Maverick City came out with a song, and it's called Refiner's Fire. And I love that song. When I first heard it, I was just like, at first, I was just like, this is, I didn't really know Maverick City at the time, but it was one of the first songs that I heard, and I was just like instantly just in love with the song. And I played it on repeat for, I want to say, months. And it just began to well up in me, this desire of what they were talking about. So I wanted to play a little bit of it because it's amazing. So let me see if I can turn this up. And just focusing on the words and what they're saying. Hopefully I can hear this.
Be what you've always been. The fire, the refiner.
It's a refiner's fire. And it's like when you present yourself to him, man, you're presenting yourself to the refining
the
process.
altar's where you meet us. Take me there. Take me there. What you need is just an offering.
Yeah.
It's right here. My life is here, and I'll be a living sacrifice for you. You're refined, the refiner. I wanna be consumed. I wanna be tried by fire and purified. You take whatever you desire. Yeah. Lord, here's my life. I wanna be tried by fire, purified. Whatever you desire, Lord, here's my life.
We're gonna go to the second verse and then move on.
Your glory wants to come. Let it go. We want it all. Your fire is consuming. Fill this place, set it ablaze, and I'll be a sacrifice for you, Lord. You're refined, the refiner. I wanna be consumed.
This is my prayer, y'all, for
I
months.
wanna be tried by fire, purified. You take whatever you desire. Lord, here's my life. I wanna be tried by fire, purified. You take whatever you desire. Lord, here's my life.
Okay, next part. I'm gonna get this one too. He's talking about clean my hands.
Purify my heart. I wanna burn for you, only for you. Take my life as a sacrifice. I wanna burn for you, only for you.
So I'm gonna stop it there. Let me see. I'm gonna try to. So I just played some clips of that because it was literally my prayer, the prayer of my heart for like months at a time. And I just couldn't get over it. It was like literally, I was telling the Lord, I was presenting my heart to him. And I was saying, Lord, I want purity. I want holiness. I want righteousness. And I didn't consider myself like, I wasn't doing, out here sinning, doing all this stuff. But, even our righteousness is as filthy rags in his presence. And I know to go forward in him, as I've learned, to go deeper in him requires some type of purging. And it's a process that he does. So he placed for me, and again, everything that I say on this channel, or that we will say on this channel, especially our personal experiences with God, our personal experiences, each one of us are different, and each one of us have different journeys, but I'm just sharing my walk. And what I know is that the closer that I began to desire, or the more I desired to get closer with him, the more he began to start pruning my heart and giving me this desire to just be pure in his presence and actually want it. That's what's so good and yet weird about the song, right? It's because you're saying, I want to be burned. I want to be burned beautiful. I want to be burned lovely. I want to be burned righteous and holy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want this, God. I want you to do what it takes so that I can be lovely in your presence, And so sometimes the things that we see in our lives, he uses those circumstances and those situations to bring us to his feet. Not to harm us or to hurt us, but to help us to remember that he is our source. He's the source of all life, all strength. And, he's helping us to really understand how to love and trust him, and he does it in whatever way he needs to do for each one of us. And sometimes it's through those trials and tribulations. So when we say, that we focus on the getting out of, then maybe we've missed the point. Maybe we've missed the purpose of what he's trying to do. And it would be better to come before the Lord and just say, well, I'm going through this, God, and what are you doing here? What is it that I need to be? What is it that I need to surrender? There's a purpose behind everything that happens. And how can this be brought to good? Not just for the sake of getting me out of it, so that I can go back to my leisure, or go back to feeling good, or go back to not having to deal with this. But what is it that you are doing in me? Because I'm on this journey, I'm on this walk with you, and I want to be closer, and I want to have intimacy, and I want to learn how to trust you in all of my ways. I don't want to be double-minded. A lot of times we think that we trust God, and one thing that God has shown me is that you say it, but you don't actually trust me. What about this situation? And I will have a situation, and it's just like, oh yeah, I guess I struggle there, So that's what this is about. That's what this journey is about. Walking with God, he begins to start to show you. But it's all for the good, because once he does, then he gives you the strength and power to overcome. He takes that off. He peels that onion off, that layer. And so now you recognize it, and you realize it, and you lay it before him. And then you're just like, okay. And then he moves on. He moves on to the next thing and the next thing, until before you know it, you become to look more like Jesus, talk more like him, resemble your Father, because we are reborn in his image. So I just wanted to share that today. We may do another video that's similar, to go in depth a little bit more, but that was very key. It's very key that God wastes nothing. He doesn't waste trials. He doesn't waste circumstances. And actually, it's to the point where we actually run to our Father, who is a consuming fire. Fire burns. Fire purifies. Fire washes away, gets rid of all of that stuff. The dross, sometimes he's got to turn the heat so that stuff can come up to the surface, and he can remove it. So keep that in mind, guys. This is a passion walk, and sometimes passion is heated. I love you and I thank you. I thank God for this opportunity to share my walk with you guys. All right, till next time. Bye.